Welcome to 5 at 5 with Stone Law Offices. I'm attorney Brendan Bybee with 5 minutes on revocable and irrevocable trusts. Now, trusts generally fall into two major categories. They're revocable or they're irrevocable. And the difference between those can be somewhat confusing if you're not really familiar with those terms and what they mean in the world of trust planning. Now, a revocable trust means essentially what it says, but what that means is it's revocable, means you can revoke it, you can do away with the trust. It means that you can make changes to the trust. So though in most cases people are not necessarily revoking these trusts, what we take that to mean in most cases that a trust is revocable is that the people who created that trust are able to make changes to it. Now, when we're looking at trusts and we're looking at the three major parties of a trust, whether a trust is revocable or irrevocable, we're generally dealing with, we've got a grantor or settlor who created the trust and designed the rules of that trust. We have a trustee who is tasked with managing the assets of that trust and the distribution of the benefits of that trust, and we have the beneficiaries for whom everything is created. So when we're looking at revocable versus irrevocable, in a revocable trust, those grantors have reserved the right to make a change. In most cases, this is in a revocable living trust that we use as sort of the foundation of their estate plan. It's sometimes referred to as a will substitute. It's essentially better than a will in every possible way, while still accomplishing everything that you hope to accomplish with a will. And being revocable means that you're able to make changes. It also has some other implications in that for all intents and purposes, when you have the right to revoke that will, then the property of that trust, when you have the right to revoke that trust and make those amendments, that means you can make changes to adjust for changes that come later. It also means that the property of that trust is deemed to belong to you for all legal and financial purposes, all tax purposes. So even though you've moved it from one place from your own ownership, taken it from yourself, and you put it into this trust, for all intents and purposes for legal and tax matters, it's still considered to be yours. Now, an irrevocable trust. If a revocable trust is one that you can make changes to, an irrevocable trust, the contrast, is a trust that you can't make changes to. You've given up the right to make changes to it. Now, that is generally true, but it's also an oversimplification of what an irrevocable trust is, and probably not going to help you as much in knowing the difference between do I want a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. In general, for that question, do I want a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, is you don't need to worry about an irrevocable trust unless you already have a revocable trust. That should be the foundation of your estate plan. That deals with all the property that you continue to have under your control, full control, and ability to change how it's distributed over the years once you are no longer alive. Okay, for an irrevocable trust, yes, it's a trust that in some respects you can't make changes to. In some respects you may be able to make changes to, depending on what you're doing. But irrevocable trusts generally should be thought of as special purpose trusts. You have a specific strategy that you're trying to accomplish, a specific goal in mind, and the irrevocable trust is if not the only, perhaps the best or most expedient way to accomplish that goal. And most of the time that's going to fall under a couple of categories. It's going to be for tax planning purposes or asset protection purposes. There may be more, but in general, with an irrevocable trust, you are employing it for a specific strategy related to tax planning or asset protection. And so that's where you get some of the differences in terms of not being able to make changes. That's not entirely true. It depends on what kind of changes you are concerned about making. In most cases, for most people, they're really mostly concerned about changing the distribution and who gets what after they're gone. And in some of those trusts, many that are focused solely on, if they're not focused on tax purposes at all, then generally you still reserve a right to change what the distribution is, but you maybe don't reserve other rights to do away with the trust. If you're doing tax planning, then you're kind of securing certain tax benefits now that are difficult to unwind later. So you're generally, again, it's irrevocable, meaning that with tax purposes, that you changing your mind is not going to be, you're not going to be able to just change your mind and not lose some benefit that you've gained because you've secured that benefit ahead of time. So with an irrevocable trust for tax purposes, you are trying to use some tax exemptions that are available or take advantage of some ability to legally avoid some income tax or other transfer taxes that may be involved. And so in general, between irrevocable and revocable trusts, primarily, in the first place, you should be concerned with revocable trust, getting that in place to do the foundation of your estate planning. And only after you have that foundation in place or in conjunction with it, should you be considering an irrevocable trust, and that will be primarily for the purposes of tax planning or asset protection, given the amount of control that you're giving up, the general control that you're giving up of the ability to revoke or amend the trust. Though in some cases, some things can be done, like I say, with asset protection, usually reserve the right to change distribution. But again, otherwise the trust is deemed to be irrevocable. It may have different income tax planning now, it may be for tax planning for after death, but you're setting in motion a specific strategy for tax or asset protection purposes with an irrevocable trust. And that is the main difference. Hopefully that helps you navigate that and know what kind of trust that you need. And if you do have those specific purposes that you need, if you have a need to provide for another person and you want to, whether it's an education trust for grandkids or a supplemental needs trust for a disabled child or grandchild or other party, those are trusts that may be irrevocable, may be able to compound the benefits that you're getting from those and provide even greater blessing for those beneficiaries. If you have questions about this, I want to explore any of these options or strategies, please give us a call.